Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Thriving with Rachael and Dr. Lou. I know last week we left off discussing supports, and I know we sort of ended on a note where it was like, oh, there's a lot loaded into whether or not we connect with a support and how do you connect with a support. And one thing it made me think of was, what is the function of a support? Like, what is it that we're looking for from a support? Because I think one thing, I do think supports are important. I think we need to get an outlet to someone else outside of my own head, right? Mm-hmm. But one thing that you have to think about is other people are not in our direct control.
Right.
Whether or not they answer the phone, whether or not they give you the feedback that you're wanting. And so one thing I think we need to explore is, what are you looking for from that support? You had mentioned last week the idea of getting that validation or being heard. So I wanted to explore, how do you self-validate? Maybe.
Oh.
Or, what other things do we get from these external things that help us that maybe aren't in our direct control? Like, how do we give that to ourselves?
So not only getting the support from others, but then self-validating and kind of acceptance ourselves.
Like, is that what I get from a support? Like, for me, that's what I get. Like, I like having an ear. I like talking out loud. I like being able to hear it out loud. I like people's feedback. And I like the validation that I get from people, the encouragement that I get. So it's kind of like, can we evaluate that for each of us? Because it might be different for all of us. Can we evaluate what it is that we get? Like, what do you get from talking to supports when you're struggling?
I think, as you were saying that, I was thinking in my head, is this me or is this what other people want? But I think one thing that is helpful is that we get comfort from the other person. Mm-hmm. So like when I'm struggling, if I'm struggling, then I'm uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to a support and asking for help, it comforts me to know that you're there, to know that you're listening, know that you understand, that you accept whatever it is that I'm going through and are willing to help me. Mm-hmm. But you kind of mentioned several different things. The idea of what we're looking for from the support, but then also what do we do with that?
Right.
So
how do you make that stay? Because if you think about it, you might have a better day when you're in interaction with another person, but what happens when you're not?
Yeah.
The moment that you leave that interaction, does your day go downhill? Like, how do you maintain the stamina, if you will, or the motivation, or whatever that you get from that, right?
Yeah, because then otherwise, if I'm not maintaining it, I'm constantly calling it.
I'm relying on it.
Which creates that dynamic that can be perceived as dumping and just being a burden,
right,
and fearing like I'm going to, burn you out
mm-hmm.
with my stuff.
Right.
And so how do you take on some of what I'm getting from you and doing it myself?
Right.
But again, a balance, right? Because sometimes I think people hear that and say, oh, then I can't talk to you.
Right. Right.
That's not what we're saying. I'm saying there needs to be a balance. And the bottom line is, we go to bed with our own thoughts.
Right, with yourself, yeah.
There's nobody, even if you're in bed with somebody else or living with somebody else, you still have your own thoughts to contend with. And that's what you hear before you fall asleep.
Right.
So let's make that something that we control and is beneficial to us. So to answer your question, what do we take from the support? Can be positive, could be negative, mm-hmm. could be ignored. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's lots of different directions that we can go. And I think the function that we may choose is to help us. That's my goal, right?
Well, that's the hope, right? So the question, I guess, what I was trying to ask is, what is it that you're hoping to get from an interaction with someone else or anything else that's outside of our control that provides me comfort? So, for instance, is it comfort? Mm-hmm. Is it a listening ear? Is it the validation? Is it the support, the encouragement? And can I give that to myself at the end of the day? Because I'm not trying to discourage people from talking to others, but I don't want that to be the excuse that we're not okay. Like, if the person's not available, oh, well, until
then
they
can
answer.
To struggle until then.
Yeah, I don't want that to be the only thing that makes me better or makes me feel better, because then it's out of my control, right? Like, it's just, we'll have to see what happens. And I don't want to feel helpless to time or to another person's schedule when it's my life that I have to sit with, and it's my, like you said, my thoughts. So I'm curious for you, how do you replicate the benefits that you get or the function of communicating with others?
Well, in some ways, there's a tremendous benefit by thinking of it myself, because I get to script it exactly the way I want it. So if I'm thinking about a support and wondering what it is that I want from them, if I write it out, I have it right there. And I can tell myself exactly what it is that I'm needing to hear, because I don't have to depend on you getting it, you understanding it, you saying it just the way I want you to do it. So I really could take control of supporting myself and comforting myself if I can just spell it out and direct that exactly how I want it. I guess the problem comes in is I don't always know what I want.
True.
And I guess part of that is sitting with discomfort, which we've talked about. And just accepting, like, yeah, this is uncomfortable right now. I don't like this.
And noticing sometimes the motives are not active. Like, a lot of times, to what I was hearing you say, is I'm trying to get rid of something. I'm trying to get rid of discomfort. I'm trying to avoid loneliness. That doesn't give me a direction, though. I'm running from something. And so we have to go back to, again, what is the experience with a person or with a thing? What does it do for me? What do I gain from that? Because the question has to be, can I replicate that then? So if it gives me relief, or if it gives me something to engage in, is there something else that I could engage in right now? Is there something else that I can feel fulfilled by?
So what do I want to go toward?
Right. Like, what do I gain from those interactions or experiences that I can replicate on my own if a person or an event or something like that is not available in this moment? Right? Even at the end of the day, like before bed, is there things that I can be doing if I can't be on the phone with somebody up until I go to sleep? Can I listen to a meditation? Can I listen to a podcast? Can I practice self-validation? Are those things that I gain from interactions or things outside of my control that seemingly help?
Yeah, I mean, if those are the things that I'm actually looking for to get, well, I can provide those to myself. And I just want to highlight that we're not saying it's an either or. Right? Like, this is an and thing. So I can go to support, and I can also use that same information that I'm looking for to provide to myself.
And maybe to maintain and continue the momentum I have from that interaction with that other person.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And I think it's important to understand, like, what's my end point? Like, what's my game plan here? Like, what am I looking to get from this? And I think if it's comfort, if it's support, if it's validation, if it's acceptance, well, am I doing those things for me?
Right.
And how do I do that? I think we talk about that, but sometimes people say, yeah, that's what I want. I just don't know how to do it. And if you go to the literal route, you could journal and write down exactly what you want to hear. Like, we're always talking to ourselves, right? That's a normal process that we all have. What if we were to choose to write the words that we want to hear?
Like, choose our script.
Yeah, choose our script. If I want to feel comfortable and confident or supported, what do I want to be hearing in order to reach that goal? To have that experience, what are the words, the cognitive thought patterns that I want to be having in my head to have that? And then write it down.
So then what do I do when maybe automatic thought comes in and tries to negate the more supportive script that I come up with? Because, if you're talking to another person, they can easily dispute the negative, right? But when it's just your mind, which is, again, I think a benefit from having a support, what if the support's not available? What if your mind is not in that space?
Well, to your point, even if I have the support, I still could have those negative thought patterns going through my head.
And I can refute everything that they come back that's positive because they obviously don't know. And
you really don't understand where I'm coming from. You're just being nice.
You have to
I mean,
say
we have
that.
all those.
Yeah.
And so it's important to recognize that those thoughts are there. And we're not trying to get rid of them. I know that sounds crazy, right? But we're not trying to get rid of them. If we focus on trying to get rid of them, we actually feed that, which makes them more abundant, more powerful, and drives us even more crazy, right? What we want to focus on is the supportive thought processes, the comments the self-talk that's actually going to make us feel supported, validated, accepted. And so when those negative thoughts come in, we need to acknowledge them, notice them, and move on to the next thought.
Or add to that thought.
Add to it.
Right.
Great idea.
As opposed to negating it, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're just chronic, and it doesn't matter what amount of evidence I have that refutes them, I still believe it at the end of the day, right? And it's hard to be kind to myself sometimes, especially if I think I deserve the negative thoughts, or if I really do believe those. And so I think, to your point, it's not about getting rid of them. It's
Right.
about what else exists, you know? And it can't just be the negative. Maybe it is automatically, but that's where the intention comes in. Like, what else, to your point, what's the script that I'd prefer to hear? Can they both exist?
And
The answer is yes.
Right?
Right. And I think a lot of times, though, we want it to be so perfect, and I only think this way, not this way. And so when we can learn to be aware and notice and not fuse with them, and notice that both can exist and that can be the goal, it's pretty powerful and actually really relieving to know that I don't have to fuse with it. I don't have to believe it. I don't have to make that the script.
You know, where I think we could go with this conversation is the idea that I get what you're saying. Like, they can both exist. But is there ever going to be a time when there's less of that negative? Like, when do I get there? After how much practice, how much, time and energy am I devoting to this positive self-talk? Am I actually going to get rid of that negative voice? When does that happen?
Which, I agree, we could explore that in a little bit more detail, but I do want to answer that question. And what research has shown is, yeah, you can dim that voice, right? It doesn't have to be as prominent. And over time, the automatic thoughts can mirror the ones that you intentionally would prefer to have. It has to be practiced, though. How much time do we spend asking ourselves that question when we're struggling? I think that's where we get stuck.
Yeah, but you're pointing out practice, and I know for me, I might say to you, but I've practiced a lot. Why isn't it working?
What is working? It's a whole other string of things we could talk about.
All right, so we have a good start here that we'll have to pick up next time.
But one thing I want to highlight from today is start noticing what you gain from interactions with others and from things that you maybe don't always guarantee in life, like an activity that you can engage in, a show that you like, a person to talk to. What do you gain from those experiences so you can learn to replicate them on your own? And two, start noticing when thoughts are maybe more automatic so that you can start choosing whether or not you want to fuse with them and engage or entertain them. And then we'll kind of pick up from that next week.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, have a good week, everyone.
See you, everybody.